Hello, Maurice Fernandez. How are you?
I'm very good. Saying hello from Arizona.
Yeah, uh, my name is Margareta Hedin, and I'm a Swedish astrologer, and I'm also organizing a very interesting astrological conference in Stockholm that will be held in the 28th of February and the 1st of March. And to this conference, I have invited one of my favorite persons on this earth. His name is Maurice Fernandez, as you can see. And do you know, Maurice, that we have known each other for, it will be in next year, 10 years already. And
All right.
yes, I would like you to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, because I think everybody knows that you are a very famous astrologer, but let's speak with your own words so we can get to know you.
Thank you, Margareta. And I'm very excited to come to Scandinavia and Sweden in particular. The last time I was in Sweden was in 1999 in Malmö, and I have not been to Stockholm. So this is exciting from that point of view. I have also many friends, astrologers, students between Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. So it's going to be a great gathering. And my focus is based on evolutionary astrology, which some of you may be familiar with. But in any case, I'm going to introduce you to not only the concept, but the way I do it. This is basically using the chart to understand your soul journey. Why are you here?
Yeah,
What is this life about for you? So all these large existential questions are very important because when we understand the big picture, we can then understand why things happen the way they do in our lives. Why do we face certain challenges? Why are we repeating some patterns? And and so it's a very spiritual and yet therapeutic approach to astrology. And I've been doing this for 35 years now, um, having a school and traveling around the world to share those insights. So, of course, you're welcome to check my website and go to the article and video section so that you can familiarize with these concepts.
yes, and I am one of the lucky persons who have studied a bit with you, and I'm very influenced about the evolutionary way, and especially getting the explanation of the purpose of this existence. I think it's the most interesting question of them all. Why are we here?
It is. And in many astrology interpretation, we look at a chart and we say, oh, you're good at this, and you're going to get married in that time. But we often don't understand where it's coming from. Why do I have these tendencies? Why do I have these talents? Where am I coming from on a soul point of view?
Yeah,
And and so we see suddenly that all these bits and pieces of our lives are actually part of a larger net, a thread. And that is what we try, as best as we can to do using evolutionary astrology is to see how life is not a fragment. There's an intelligent mechanism and consciousness that is behind it. Even when we face challenges and there's a lot of suffering in this world. So it's important to have these guidelines. And we're going to talk about that on the talks that I'm presenting, because in 2026, there is a very rare alignment of all the transpersonal planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so I'm going to get into what is the meaning of this alignment, but also how each of these transpersonal planets is impacting us personally, but also our civilization.
Yeah. Yeah, here in Sweden, people, we are not so skilled in knowing all the different directions of astrology. People are just simply interested in us in astrology, and I think it's very, very good that you are coming with your perspective, because it's actually really needed here. Uh, and yeah, what I'm thinking about the great shift everybody is now thinking about it, since we are also living very close to Ukraine, and we are also focusing a lot on the 20th of February, and that's
Yeah.
quite close to our conference. What do you think about having a conference in the middle of the eclipse season and with these dates around?
Well, if it was up to me, I would have come to Sweden in July and not in February, but not because of the transit, just because of the weather. Um, these are important alignments, however. Eclipse season is a time where there's a greater sense of fate. Most of our life, when there's no eclipse, everything goes by with the routine, and we're in charge of making our decisions, and we just go by our existence. But when there are times of eclipses, especially when it affects our charts more personally, there's a sense that there's a higher intervention, that there's something of a more fated nature that is happening. And that can be very uplifting. I remember that in 2014, there was an eclipse that was strategic in my chart. And in 1 week, I became the president of OPA. I started a new relationship and I moved to a new place. Like, everything happened very rapidly. And it's as if, there was a higher intervention to move the plot.
Yeah.
But it's true that eclipses can also mean that something is taken away from you. They say, the legend says that kings and queens are born and die during eclipse, around the season of the eclipse. And that, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's royalty, but it's a sense of higher destiny, if we explain it simply.
Okay, but then, Maurice, can you tell our listeners who are thinking if they shall or shall not buy a ticket to come to the conference? Can
Well,
you can you tell them what they will learn from you? Because you are going to be our keynote speaker. We are so happy to have you here, but can you tell them what they will learn, what you're going to speak about? Because it's going to be 2 full days with Maurice. No, no, two speeches in the 2 days, and then 2 days workshop. And people want to know about that. Can you inform us?
absolutely. So, the eclipse season means that the event can be more impactful, that you can make special connections, that you can have special realization, because it's not a regular routine, time. And like you said, there are also other Saturn Neptune alignments around that time. So, as you say, we're going to spend 4 days together.
Yeah.
2 days of the conference where I'm going to talk about this special alignment. And I just want to add that the transpersonal planet came together previously in 1965, which is the beginning of Generation X, and in 1993, which was the beginning of the internet revolution, among other things. So these were very important cultural milestones, right? And we are now on the threshold of something very new that we may only find out, after the fact,
We believe
what
it.
we're going through.
Mm.
Those 2 days are going to focus on this eclipse, not directly, but because the eclipse is in the sign of Pisces, and Pisces represents spiritual awakening, spiritual development. The 2 days are going to focus on how do we see our spiritual development, our progress, our self-realization in the natal chart. So it's not just going to be theory, we're going to also use the chart of the participants, and there's going to be a more personal feel to these 2 days on March 2nd and 3rd.
Yes. Uh, some person, they are worried that they will not understand you. And I am assuring everybody that you are very easy to understand for us who are Swedish, because you speak in a way that we have time to understand. And also, no, but I'm thinking more, do you need to be an astrologer to attain to your workshop, or can anybody do that?
I would say it would be wise to know the basics. Now, if you have any struggle with that, it's easy to go over some material prior to the event. So I would recommend, maybe you have material in Swedish that people who have no background, can familiarize with, learn a little bit about the symbols, learn a little bit about the terminology. You don't need to be super advanced, but I don't want people to feel completely lost either.
But I think this is not the case with the people who will attend. They
Yeah.
do know the basics of astrology.
Yeah. And so that should be enough because the way I teach is often, accessible to beginners, but also, it changes the perception of people who are more advanced. So this is part of my way of doing things is that it touches the humanity, it touches people on an existential level. And I believe it's going to be insightful. I believe, you're going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah. I'm looking so much forward to having you here in Stockholm. And is it something you want to say to our listeners?
I'd like to thank you
Thank you.
because it's not easy to organize conferences. It's not easy to have people get out of their computers and join in person, especially after COVID and, the Zoom technology. So much is available online, but there's something magical. There's something different that happens when we meet in person.
It's
And
going.
that's the community connection, but it's also the direct learning in person that you cannot buy anywhere else. So I'm really happy that people like you are taking the risk and are putting so much sweat and effort in bringing astrologers together, in making the community stronger.
I love what I do, but I want to say a few words in the end about the conference, because it will be in the old town, and so this is the heart of Stockholm, the oldest part, and I have a small place here, where you also are going to have your workshop, and around the corner you will have your hotel, and then just a few blocks down we are going to be in a very old but renovated restaurant. The house is from the 1600, but the restaurants, it's a good place. What is very high tech, so everything will be filmed. There will be technicians there, and well, I think it's going to be really, really good. It's a vegetarian restaurant, and all the people who are working there are they are working for Greenpeace, and yeah, so it's a place very suitable for an astrology conference. Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
So,
And
so back i Syre in Gamla stan, everybody welcome, and we meet each other there. Okay?
tack.
Tack, bye bye.